Hello out there in YouTube land. Nice to see you all again today. Today we welcome Mr. Mark Kuniya, presently residing in Nevada, and welcome to our Diner Talks, Mark. Nice to see you.
Nice to
Thank you
see you,
for
Scott.
joining us. Thank you
Yeah,
for
happy to
joining
be
us.
here.
And Mark Kuniya. Kuniya is not a name we often hear in America. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, my father is Japanese, and the Kuniya family. Kuniya is not a very common name in Japan.
Uh-huh.
Um, I haven't done the full history of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've looked up some Kuniyas on Google, and I think there are a
Mhm.
few in Japan. My uncle lives in Japan, is still alive in Japan.
Uh-huh.
Um, and Yeah, uh, the kanji for Kuniya is
Uh,
Kuni no Tani, the
Kuni no Tani. So Kuniya would be what, country, and
country
Tani would be valley.
valley. Yes,
Valley. Okay. So Mr. Country Valley, welcome. So what are you originally? I don't, as I remember, you're from someplace like West Virginia or something like that.
I'm from Virginia.
Virginia. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
what got you to Nevada, way out west there? And
Wow, that's a long story. Yeah, my mom is from West Virginia,
okay.
and my father's from Japan. I always tell people I'm a half Japanese hillbilly. Uh,
Okay.
uh, yeah, I born and raised in Northern Virginia.
What part of where exactly in Northern Virginia?
And
Uh,
Manassas, which
Manassas.
is
Okay.
yeah. So
All right.
first battle of first battles.
Yeah, the Civil War. Yeah. Okay. So, and how did you say your father's from Japan, but your mother is not, though? Your mother
Right.
is what, Euro-American or something?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So how did your father get to America? Was he like what was it called, like first generation, third generation Japanese American, third, fourth generation, what? But,
He'd be I think first generation.
yeah. Okay. So he
Yeah.
came directly to America from Japan, and when
Right.
was that?
That was, let's say, mid 60s, mid to late 60s.
Okay.
He so my family is goes back into the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay.
And my grandfather, my father's dad was a minister,
Okay.
and he so I'm just processing. This is a long story, but he well, it goes back like four or five generations, and
Okay.
my one of my uncles, my great uncle, was credited for bringing Adventism
Uh-huh.
to Korea.
Korea. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And so my father came to the United States to go to school in the Adventist church.
Okay.
Yeah, and met my
Where
mom.
where was he that? Where,
And
yeah,
this is in Maryland, Tacoma Park, Maryland.
in Tacoma Park. Okay. All right. And where that is. And so, and that was why he came. And where did he come from in Japan? What part of Japan? Is
That was from Nagano.
Nagano?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, nice place. Beautiful. Have you been to I think I remember
yeah,
you were in
yeah.
Japan,
We
right?
flew
So
into
you went
Nagano
to Nagano?
that same year. Yeah, same year we came to see you.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And did you see any relatives there? I mean, do you still have any like relatives in Nagano, or?
I not in Nagano, but my uncle's in Tokyo, in the Tokyo
Okay.
area.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you meet your uncle when you were here?
Yes.
Oh, great, great, great. And
So,
did you s- at that time did you speak Japanese?
yeah, some.
And did your uncle speak English at all?
Yes,
Oh,
spoken.
okay. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, and your father spoke English when? before he came to America, or he learned English in
I
America?
think he learned English in Japan, and yeah, and yeah, I think so. I need to talk to him about that. I think he was speaking English, some English before he came to
Okay.
the United States.
So
Yeah.
your father's still alive. How old is he?
My father is 77.
77. Ah,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, a few years older than me.
yeah, and
Well,
he lives not far from here in San Francisco.
okay. All right. In where?
San Francisco.
He lives in San Francisco now. Okay. And he lives alone or with
He
your
lives with my stepmother.
stepmother? Okay. All right. Okay. Uh, all right. And let's see. So you're married, right, to Alisa. Let me post a photo of that one you
Yeah,
sent me.
yeah. Lisa and I met in Gunma. We were both teaching in Japan
Uh-huh.
and in 2003, 2004. And Elisa's also half Japanese.
I see. Uh-huh. And wow,
Her mother's
that's
Japanese.
interesting. That's interesting. And where was this photo taken? This is Alisa, obviously, on your right there, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that was taken in Pittsburgh last summer.
in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Oh, what were you doing in Pittsburgh?
Visiting family.
Uh-huh.
My mom lives not far from there in West Virginia.
Okay.
So we flew her to Pittsburgh, and my brother and his family came down from New York City.
Yeah, that's why I have the state West Virginia in my mind about something. So that's where your mother lives?
That's where she lives. Yeah, she was
Okay.
born in West Virginia.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And you are both, how can I ask your age? So, yeah.
Sure. Yeah,
How old are you?
I just turned 45.
45.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Oh, young
Yeah.
man, young man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh.
And Elisa's close to 50. She'll
Is she?
I'll say, yeah.
Wow. Well, she doesn't look, she looks like in her 30s, yeah, or even late 20s, close to 50. My goodness. Oh, well, she looks young. And you said that she's half up. So who is the Japanese parent for her? Father or mother?
Her mother.
Mother. And she came to America when? The mother.
Oh, I'm not sure. I think it
Not
was,
sure. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I think
Uh,
maybe 70s.
in the 70s.
Yeah, because
Okay.
she's a few
So,
years older than me. So yeah, she
okay.
came, I think she came in, yeah, maybe late 60s,
All right.
70s. Yeah.
So let me ask you, when you were growing up, you have a Japanese father and your mother's family, where did they originate?
And yeah, just Northern Virginia, West
No, I
Virginia.
mean, in
Oh,
Europe,
I
where did
yeah,
they
that
immigrate
kind
from?
of genealogy. I think there's some Scotch Irish.
Scotch Irish. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
when you were growing up, this is the main point about that, but how much did the Japanese background influence you? I mean, were you made to learn language or Japanese language when you were growing up? Did your father speak to you in Japanese or what? Anything?
A little, and my my memory of hearing Japanese was pretty much when he would call home or his parents would call him. We went to Japan a couple times. I know once when I was, I think, 5 or 6.
Okay.
And yeah, my brother and I did not hear a lot of Japanese when we were growing up.
Okay. All
We
right.
were certainly exposed to the culture. My father cooked. We would have we had rice with every meal.
Okay.
Occasionally we'd have ramen, and when
Okay.
we afford it,
All right.
we'd have sushi
Okay.
dinner.
Oh, that's cool.
But it was a pretty basic American
Yeah.
family
Okay.
household.
All right. Great.
Yeah,
Great. Where
yeah.
where did you go to school? You went to a regular public high school, was it? And
No, I went there. So, being raised in the Adventist church, I went to private school.
a private school. Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what was different in this was an Adventist private school? I didn't even know there
Yes.
was such a thing as an Adventist. I've heard of the Seventh Day Adventist, but I didn't know that they
Yeah.
had schools. But
Oh yeah, they have a number of schools all over the
okay.
country.
Wow.
Um, Yeah, I was raised in a very small school.
Okay.
There were about 35 students, K grades in kindergarten through eighth grade.
Wow.
I,
Wow. That's
I was
really.
I was one of two in
Oh.
my eighth grade class. I was the
Talk
only one
about
in fourth
private
grade. I,
instruction. It's
yeah,
like,
I was the
yeah.
only student in fourth grade.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it was like a one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then I went to high school in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia.
Was that a public, or that was also an Adventist or
That's private, yeah,
private?
private, yeah,
Okay, private. Now,
yeah, boarding.
what was the difference between? Well, of course, you didn't really experience a public high school, but you sort of have an idea what it is, right? But what was the
Yeah,
difference
and I've
between?
worked in public high schools
Right.
or
Okay.
public schools since
Right.
2006. So
Okay. So, and what would you say is the main difference between an Adventist, a private school, and a regular public high school? What was what would was there a strong religious focus? I mean, did you have
oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
required chapel service or something like that every day?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, all through high school and in college too. I had to go to
wow.
um
Your
go
college too
to
was Adventist college?
yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Went to Andrews University in Michigan.
Andrews, I know, I knew. Wow. This is, I'm learning this. It's all new to
So
me.
that's how
Yeah.
I ended up
Yeah.
in Japan. I went through college in Michigan and got my degree in English, did
Mm.
my student teaching. Wasn't quite ready to go into teaching.
Uh-huh.
Um, had I stayed there or stayed in the States, I would have been teaching public school English.
Okay.
But was my father proposed I go to Japan,
Uh-huh.
and and it was like perfect coming of age moment. Like I just
Right.
finished
Right.
college.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to travel, and I think he wanted me to learn more about Japanese culture.
So
Uh,
this when you came to Japan, that was when you like 2006 or seven. That's when I met you the first time.
well, it was before, so I went to Japan
Okay.
on the JET program after I
Okay.
graduated.
All right.
That was
JET
2000.
program, for those who don't know, that's what does that mean? Japan English teacher, is that what that means?
Japan exchange and teaching.
Exchange, teacher. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. And you taught where in Japan? In Gunma,
And
was it?
Gunma-ken,
Gunma
yeah,
Prefecture.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, in a small in Chiyoda-machi.
What
So
and what level grades did you teach, or did you teach different grades?
I taught middle school.
Middle school. Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah,
And okay, and then you went back, and then you went into teaching. Is that right?
right.
In America, in American. And
Yeah.
how did you get into Nevada? I mean, way out there.
Well, so I met Elisa in Japan,
Right,
and
right.
and I came back, and her parents. So she was raised in the Chicago area,
Okay.
and her parents retired from
Okay.
moved to Lake Tahoe,
Uh,
Nevada. So
okay. I see. So
so
you
she and
got
her family moved out here before so we
okay.
spent a year apart,
All right.
and she and her family moved out here, and
Okay.
I followed soon after. And actually, I
Wow.
showed up in Reno, Nevada with a suitcase and a banjo.
Speaking of banjo, I have a photo you sent. Oh, here we go. Not of you with a banjo, but with a jug, right? And that's not liquor in there, right? This is you're
No,
doing what is it called? A jug band?
yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
and
eh,
yeah,
yeah. I played in the jazz band for a number of
yeah, I
years.
mean, like, like for other instruments, like they have a name for the people who do it, like guitarist or saxophonist. What do we call someone who plays the jug? A juggist?
Yeah, I guess a juggist or jug player. And
Okay.
that was I mean
Right.
that music comes from that's the roots of R&B, and it's
Right.
pre-war
Right.
blues. So I did jug players, and in the beginning of the
Right.
century
Right.
they were, they served as like the tuba player, the
Okay.
bass player in the band.
All right.
Yeah.
And
So
how did you
yeah,
get hooked up with jug playing? Uh,
That was while I was in Michigan. I discovered pre-war blues and jazz,
Hmm.
and had been had started picking on the banjo,
Okay.
and let's see, I think, it started with discovering the anthology of American folk music,
Uh-huh.
uh,
Okay.
our anthropologist and musicologist Harry Smith put together in late 50s. That set off the whole folk revival of the 60s.
Right, right.
And I'll never forget hearing Cannon's Jug Stompers and the Memphis Jug Band.
Okay.
And yeah, so it was like the next day, as soon as I heard that recording, I was like, I'm gonna go find a jug and
So you
started
you
a
had you
jug
had
band.
you had musical training pre-jug music, like when you were a child. Did you learn what, the piano or what or something? But
I was playing guitar.
uh,
I had voice lessons in high school.
okay.
Yeah, I was in
Uh,
choir all 4 years in high school.
okay. So you were involved with music before that, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Music is, yeah, and ever since and when I was a kid, my grandmother, she'd
Uh,
play guitar, and
uh,
um, I learned many bluegrass tunes and gospel tunes from my grandmother,
okay.
my mom's side.
Your mom's side. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And now, so you mentioned education, and you're teaching in a public. And what grades are you teaching now, and what subject are you teaching a particular subject, or you teach all subjects, or what? But
I'm currently teaching seventh grade English language arts.
English language arts, so seventh grade.
Yeah,
Okay. And
yeah.
so what could you give us an idea what you do in that course? Like your language arts. I mean, is it learning how to write or reading things or what? But
Yeah, both.
both. Okay.
Yeah, and well, I'll preface that with I've been out of the classroom for 6 years.
Hmm.
I was so I taught middle school English for 9 years, and then took a training position at
Okay.
the last school district I worked at,
Okay.
training teachers. And so last year I left that position, and this has been my first year back teaching English,
Uh,
and it feels like this is my 17th year in education, and
wow.
this year has felt like my first year back to teaching.
Wow. And how does that feel?
It's been strangely wonderful and
Mm.
exhausting and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
exhilarating. Um it's kids are different than they were when I was in the classroom.
Uh,
You know,
I wanted to ask you. I was one of the questions I wanted to ask you. Are
yeah.
kids different now than what? And how are they
Well,
different? But
they have more distractions,
uh,
and I think I mean, especially like post pandemic, I think
uh,
the needs are so varied and so diverse.
mm,
Um, and kids are different. Our schools have changed some. And I can be rather critical of the school system that I work in, but I have the utmost gratitude for every educator I work with.
mm,
But the system's broken. It
mm,
doesn't serve every kid.
right,
It's still rigid factory model.
mm,
And so yeah, this year's been about experimenting and trying to bring some playful, bring some fun into the classroom.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, I try to give my students as many writing opportunities as possible.
mm,
Um, I I'd like to I like to have them write more than I can read,
mm,
and just difficult because it's
mm.
like grades are a currency in schools.
Well,
And I don't believe so much in grades.
well, I was going to get to that, but first,
Yeah,
first
yeah.
of all, I mean, you hear in the media, whether it's social media or things on whatever, but on the newspapers, such a total damnation of the educational system, and
Mhm.
uh, that it's not serving the kids, or it's ruining the kids, it's brainwashing the kids, depending on what side of the what ideology you're
Yeah,
coming from, right?
yeah,
But with all that, and I always take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of these people, they have their own agenda. So,
sure, sure.
but is it worthwhile
I
to
think
you
it is.
personally? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And and I have to, despite the challenges I face every day, I have to remind myself like why I became a teacher to begin with.
Mm. Mm.
And that's just I've always had a love for learning. And even
Right.
when I loved school
Mm.
when I was in school.
Mm.
Um I as I had a lot of freedom as a student to learn about what I wanted.
Okay.
And
Uh,
and
because you're the only person in the class.
yeah, that's right, especially my
Well,
fourth grade
part
year,
of it,
right? Yeah, I was my own teacher. uh, um, and it's I just I've seen like how quickly technology and society has accelerated, and
Mm.
school is so far behind.
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know and I don't blame families like during the pandemic when like all these little like learning pods popped up, and more kids were staying home, and parents were doing what they could to further their kids' education.
Right.
uh, and I discovered like during and I was supporting and training teachers during the lockdown and during the pandemic. And um it was a lot of just like trying to replicate school online.
Right. Right.
And that was really foretelling that like that's like school just is doesn't work for a lot of kids. We
Right.
can't.
Yeah.
And because we're learning all the time. And
Well, like in public schools, as far as I know, I mean, you have a lot of input from parents. Whereas if you were go to university, like parents are, well, when I was a parents were no longer a problem, right? They didn't call up the president of the university and complain, Professor so and so is right. But in lower, the high school level, mid school level, and so forth, how is what is the situation with the parents? Are they really? Uh, do they do they Well, for example, if you were to assign a reading of a certain novel or something like that, would you get objections from the parents? This is right.
yeah, well, I haven't had any objections this year. Certainly I know that can happen. It's happened in the past. My first few years of teaching. I don't send. I mean, my students should be reading at home, independently. Um, they can choose. They choose their book, like
Oh,
a course.
that's cool. I used to do that too. That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. Um, Teaching reading is very difficult. I don't send very much homework home,
Mm.
because I think it's an equity issue. And
Mm.
a lot of kids go home and they don't have the support.
Right, right, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so I just then that's mainly why I don't send homework home.
Okay.
But yeah, there I haven't. I mean, I've heard and read about some of the objections of, I mean, with the whole critical race theory,
Uh,
and
uh, uh, uh,
that's certainly that's a reality, but I haven't had any personal experiences with that yet.
okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
there was some issue with that in the last district I worked at.
Mm.
And Yeah, it's just like as you said, it's very partisan. So depends on who's making the
Uh,
argument.
yeah. But about grades, in my personal experience, I also that was not enthusiastic about grading students, but I often let them grade themselves, right? But of
Yeah.
course, I wouldn't even do that, except, you have this bureaucratic responsibility that at the end of the semester, you have to turn in grades and all these little blanks on the sheet have to be filled out. And if you don't, you get in trouble or get
Yeah.
fined
Yeah.
or something like that. But
Yeah.
how do you feel about the grading, the grades, the idea of grades? But
Well, I think they're harmful. I think they and I'm very much in the aligned with what some of our progressive educators have said about grades. So like Alfie Cohen, uh,
okay, I'll
you
go
know,
on. I'm familiar with him, yeah,
that,
but
that's grades tend to diminish students' interest in whatever they're learning about.
mm,
Um, so it's reducing their quality of thinking.
right, right, yeah,
In my experience, I've seen students choose the easiest task
uh,
when given an option.
right, right, yeah,
And Yeah, it's been embedded in our school system for so long
mm,
uh, that it's kind of like, unfortunately, it's just what we do.
mm, mm,
And um,
yeah,
yeah, I've been experimenting with grades, with ungrading this year,
okay.
and
And how does that work? Could you go into a bit more detail about like the
well, I don't know. I can't say it's working, but I um I don't give a lot of points
okay,
for certain assignments. I try to grade things on a scale of proficiency,
okay,
and do my best to make that scale in student friendly terms
okay,
and transparent.
right, right,
Um,
yeah,
and that's challenging, because I'm trying to communicate and get students to think about how and what they're learning.
okay, mm,
So it's more than just a grade or points on an
okay,
assignment.
right, right.
Um, and then at the end of the day, like they want to get the points.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah, and like, well, when you get to the university, like the
yeah,
teachers get reputations. This is a high grader, this is a low grader, so the students tend to go to the teacher that gives high grades, right? And ignore and stay away from the teacher who's called a tough prof, right? Who
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
give high grades and so forth and make
yeah.
you work hard. But yeah,
And
so yeah, it's not an ideal situation, is it? How do you feel about the idea of compulsory education? To this core concept for public education that not only public but private too, that it's compulsory, right?
mm,
That from the time and is how do you feel about that? Should it be compulsory or should it be for people who want to learn?
mm. Well, I think everyone has a, like, deep down, like, they have a desire to learn.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think I think education should be for everybody. I think, but I think it's that the idea of compulsory. I don't know that it should be compulsory. I just, I want to change what public education means
Okay.
for
Yeah.
students.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. But it's
Like, I guess I question, like, do students need to go to school for 6 hours a day?
right. Yeah. There's
That
that.
should
Yeah.
that be compulsory?
Right. Right. And
Um,
the whole idea. I mean, I agree the education to be available for anybody who wants it, but I don't know about and my according to my own reading, I was interested in this, way back when I was still working.
mhm,
How did this compulsory education system arise? And you probably are aware of this anyway, but that it was the like the Manufacturers Association of America who put
yeah,
lobbied with the government, to start this. It wasn't from the people. It wasn't a grassroots movement, right? It was the industrial society that wanted, because before that, people had to have the apprenticeship training system, and that cost money, right?
Yeah.
To teach them to read
Yeah.
and write and stuff like that, right? And to do math, and so they come up with this idea that it'd be cheaper for the industry, for the businesses, for the government to start a system of compulsory education, right? So there was a book called by a man named Cochrane, business. What was the name of it? The Business Influence in American Life, or something like that. And this seems to be the situation with all the countries that eventually did develop compulsory education. It had to do with industrialism, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway, let's get on to a different topic here, right?
Okay.
And this is obviously your family, right? And that's Mia Mai. Is that her name, Mia Mai? Is that
Mia
right?
May.
Huh?
Mia May.
Mia May. Okay, Mia May. All right.
Yeah.
And I sort of remember she was born in what, 2009, was it?
2009. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I kind of remember I was going over to Canada to Prince Edward Island, and you sent me an email, said you had a baby. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So how old is she now?
13.
Oh my God. Time
Yeah.
flies, huh?
8th grade.
Eighth grade. Wow. And I dig those glasses, those heart-shaped glasses are really cool. And the little boy is Toshi, right?
Yeah. Toshiro Fritz. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Toshi is 9. In
9, is he?
fourth,
Okay.
in 4th grade this year.
Okay. And what kind of things are they into?
Mia is into theater.
Okay.
She's in her, I've lost count. She's in her, like, I think 18th play.
Wow.
She's gonna do a production of Seussical. And yeah, she's in dance, and she does aerial silks. Just like sort of acrobatic.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you twirl the sick, right?
That's right. Yeah.
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 Okay.
So,
All right.
on the silk.
All right.
Yeah, and Toshi's on baseball, basketball, video
Wow.
games.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I remember correctly, Alisa is a teacher too, right?
She is. Yeah, she's a ceramics teacher.
A ceramics teacher. Okay. And what level does she teach at?
She's high school.
High school. Okay.
Yeah,
And
so
is it the same school district you're in, or a different school
it is the
district?
same. Yeah, same school district. Yes.
So and the physical building is the same, or are they different buildings?
Different. I'm at a middle school.
Okay.
And
Well,
she's
I
at
know,
the,
like sometimes because of the dwindling number of young people, they combine them. High school, middle school get combined into one building, but
yeah.
they don't do that. The high school I went to, just to give you an example, where I went to, it was in New Jersey. They don't have enough kids anymore, so like all the grades are combined into this one building now. So supposedly. Right. So anyway, all right, and this this next one here is kind of an interesting photo. What do we got here? The ninja,
Yeah.
ninja. Is that
That-
the
yeah,
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
yes, that's my brother Matt and I, and
That's
early.
you. Oh, I thought it was your two kids now. No, so
No, no,
that's you when you were little.
yeah, yeah.
Which one are you?
Also, I'm the one on the left.
On the left. Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And this is where? This is in Virginia
That's a Manassas.
and Manassas. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I chose this picture because that was one of the few times my father's parents visited us in
Uh-huh.
Virginia, and my grandmother Sakaye, she made these ninja suits for us.
She made them for you?
Yeah.
Are any are they real swords?
Yeah, well,
You'd chop off any head.
yeah, just say, just some toy swords. They probably picked them up at
Okay.
you know,
Mhm.
the weed out of the way or something. It's
Well,
yeah. my grandparents were, as I said, my father was born in Nagoya, but they lived in Kobe for many years.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Okay.
uh,
All
so
right.
I think that so when I came back from Japan and started Country Valley Press, it was
Mm.
uh, for me. It's always been about kind of bringing these two worlds together. You know,
Uh-huh.
my
Okay.
my American and Japanese roots,
Okay.
and
All right.
yeah, just yeah. Should we talk about poetry?
Well, yeah, but you mentioned your roots, and I was just wondering, have you experienced any kind of discrimination based on, your being connected with Japan or anything like that? Especially, during the coronavirus, there was all, this anti-Asian movement,
Mm.
or even before when you were young. Did you have any problems with that?
Yeah, some when I was growing up.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
What,
I
what,
mean,
well, like people would call you names, or what kind of problems?
yeah. I mean, it was yeah. I mean, kids in my neighborhood.
Okay.
Um,
Right.
yeah, I remember one experience of told some kids in my neighborhood that my brother and I were, I had a Japanese father. We were half Japanese,
Uh,
and uh, and the kid's question was like, "Well, does your house smell like fish?"
well, well, at least they knew that Japanese eat fish.
Right? Yeah.
Give them credit for
Well, I
pushing.
remember, I guess at the time, and I don't know. I mean, at the time, I thought I was like, that's a strange question to ask, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I guess I had some discrimination, but it's you
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Well, my kids did here too, but
yeah. How about yeah,
yeah, they had various things, but they grew up to be solid people. I mean,
mm,
so far, I mean, they're not didn't grow up to be axe murderers or anything like that. So
mm.
they seem to be, getting along in life and trying to enjoy life. This photo I'm sharing now is Country Valley Press, and you mentioned that you started this Country Valley Press of your own. And this, talk about this for a while, will you?
Yeah. Well, it's I'm just looking at 71 followers. I haven't. It's been this page has been pretty inactive for a while. I just I just wanted to do a screenshot to send to you.
I
Yeah,
see some photos of people I know down the bottom there.
yeah. It's just yeah, good for me to talk. I've been away from the press for a little while.
Well, what gave you the inspiration to start that?
Well, I think um while I was in Japan, my last year in Japan, I published a self-published a book,
Okay.
and I had been writing Sid Corman,
Right,
uh,
right, yeah.
uh, right up in well,
For
actually,
people who don't know, Sid Corman is an American poet who resided for a long time in Japan. He died in 2004. Okay. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's okay.
I just don't know how much, like the audience, knows some of these names and so forth. And all right, okay, go ahead.
Um,
Yeah, so you got in touch with Sid Corman, who
yeah, I
was
got in
living
touch
in
with
Kyoto at
Sid,
the time. Right?
and I had been into small press poetry for a few years,
Okay.
a little bit. And I got in touch with Bob Arnold around the same time. I and Bob Arnold from Longhouse Poetry.
Right, right. In
Who's
Vermont, right? Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
Vermont. That's Sid Corman's for people to know. That's Sid Corman's.
That's
Um,
executor. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, and then when I arrived back in the States,
Mm.
I just had this fire to get in touch with poets and
Okay.
learn more from them. And that's actually, within I think a couple years after that, I contacted you and published your book.
You did a couple things of mine. Yeah, thank you very
Yeah,
much for
oh yeah,
this.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Uh, uh, Yeah, so
But
Country Valley, that would be like the name from the Chinese characters for your name, Kuniya,
yeah,
right? Well,
yeah,
country and valley.
yeah. I mean, it made
Right.
sense at the time.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
kind of, just learned about what Kuniya means and
right,
had,
all right,
seen this kanji and like, it's
yeah,
turn
and
turn it.
I'm going to talk about show some examples of what you do with that Country Valley Press. But before that,
Yeah,
for people who don't know, I mean, some of the people watching, I mean, they're not really familiar with literary matter as much at all. But uh, uh, you mentioned that yours is a small press. Now, how is a small press different than what is a small press, right?
well, it's generally independently run. I've been publishing um everything for my home. I mean, I've outsourced a few companies,
Right?
but when I started, everything I was publishing everything for my home printer
Okay,
for the most part. I mean, with the exception of the few small Japanese bound books that I did, like
right,
yours,
okay,
um, that printed in Japan, but I hand bound everything. So, um, yeah, it was, at the time I was collecting small press poetry from like the Elizabeth Press, from Origin,
right,
um, and just very fascinated with that art, with that making.
right.
And, so I started doing it myself, and yeah, there's Bob
Yeah,
Arnold.
this is Bob Arnold. Okay, because I
Right.
thought it was probably Bob Arnold, but I couldn't see the name on the cover. But so this is, would you say this is a typical of example of the what you do?
Absolutely, and and this was inspired. I give full credit to Sid and Origin Press when I
Okay,
started collecting his books. Sid did these beautifully bound
right.
book, chapbooks, and
So for those who,
I received my first copies from Bob Arnold,
okay,
and actually at the time I had taken a bookbinding class when I was in Gunma,
aha,
and that was
okay,
my, I did my book, and then yeah, I did John
wow,
Martone,
right, right, yeah,
and I think this was the yeah, actually I think yours was the second one, and
okay.
then I did
A
Bob
breath
Arnold.
apart, right? Yeah, that was.
Right,
Yeah. Uh, the For those who don't know, this would be called what in Japanese? It'd be called watoji, right?
right.
Is this would be a a Japanese bound. What would we call it in English? Watoji. How would you say it in
Yeah, I
English?
think they stab binding is the
Stab
proper,
binding.
that's the
Okay.
proper.
All right, and you do this thread work yourself, right? You make this the
Yeah,
whole thing yourself, and
right.
you get the paper somewhere? Is
Well, I had this printed in Japan,
okay,
and then yeah, I folded every page and made the covers.
okay,
I bought the cover. I mean, the covers I was I got at a oh, it's been a while, but I ordered them, and but everything, yeah, it was it took, I think at the time, I mean, because I was still a beginner at it, it
okay.
can take about 15-20 minutes a book.
Oh wow! For one book
Yeah, for one book.
to
So
make
yeah.
this
So that's
book
why,
would take
this was
15,
like
20 minutes, right?
50 to 100 copies.
Oh,
Yeah.
and is and 50 to 100 copies. So you can imagine how much time this is a
Yeah.
labor of love actually. And this paper, would this be Japanese washi paper or what would they
Yes.
call it,
Yeah,
rice
that is
paper, whatever
washi.
it's called? It is okay.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's, it's a beautiful book. And, these books, I'll tell the audience, I have some of them here, and the feel of them in your hand is something very special. I mean, it feels like a living thing, and when you
Yeah.
realize that, that someone is not made by a machine, it's like, and it's made by hand, and someone put this
Yeah.
work into this book, it's quite a different experience uh, than picking up, a regular machine printed book. Uh, so let me just get some others on here, right? And so you're saying that your press is not active right now. When was the last book you published? Was it this one?
That's the last one. Yeah.
And how
Yeah.
do you
Charlie's
pronounce
book.
his name? Mayor?
Merhoff.
Huh? What is it?
I think it's Merhoff.
Merhoff. Merhoff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know Charlie. I think
I know him. I never met him personally, but I know him
you.
through mostly. I know him through Donna Fletcher, who was in
Hmm.
do you know her, Connecticut?
Yeah.
And she was a big fan of his, and I saw used to exchange comments on her posts that she used to place on Facebook. But I've never really been in touch with him. No, but of course, I know who he is. But and so, how do you get to know these people, these poets that you publish? How
Well,
do you find them?
I started just finding them online
Okay,
you and Bob Arnold put me in touch with many of the poets. And it's really just been a life of reading poetry.
okay,
And I find someone that I connect with, their work resonates with me,
right,
and I reach out to them. I imagine working with their poems and creating a little book,
right,
and
okay.
we go from there. I've been working with I've known Charlie since 2006.
Oh wow, okay,
He's I have he's in the Empty Hands Broadside series,
okay. And
and
you write poetry yourself, right?
some, yeah. I write every day.
Okay,
I've kept a journal since I was 13.
okay.
So I'm constantly writing. I haven't published anything in many years.
Okay.
Um, just been.
What moved you to get into poetry?
I'm
Anything
sorry.
particular? What moved you to get into poetry, to writing poetry? Was anything in particular?
I think my grandmother. I think I learned about poetry from my grandmother. She would, I spent, especially in high school, I spent 4 years away from home, because I was in boarding school, and she would write me every other week, and she'd leave a poem, like usually it was one of her own poems. And
Oh, she
even
wrote. Your
yeah, yeah,
grandmother wrote poems.
yeah.
Okay.
Or she would send me she would copy a song. She'd heard a song and she'd copy it to me. And it was a Bible verse. Like she would copy like a page of Bible verses, and
Okay.
that
All
she
right.
just
Okay.
and I yeah, thinking about it now, I think that's where I grew up singing in choirs, and going to church every week. And um I'd listen to sermons, and it would often end with a Bible passage or a poem. And
Uh,
I don't know, I think that's kind of my awakening to poetry.
okay. All right. Yeah.
Strangely, yeah.
All right. Well, who, I assume you have a favorite poet, and who is your favorite poet and why?
A favorite. I don't know if I can narrow it down to one.
Well, or give a
Or
poet
a
that has
few.
more influence on you than others, right?
Uh, I think the poet John Taggart.
John Taggart.
Yeah,
Okay.
John Taggart. He I did one of his I did a chapbook of his many years ago. Uh, John Taggart, he he's known for a literary magazine called Maps.
Map. Uh,
Um, he published Zukofsky. He did an issue on John Coltrane,
oh,
and
okay.
he's done a lot of work on Robert Duncan as well.
Okay.
Um, I don't know. Um, he may fit into that sort of the language poets.
Well, yeah, that's
I don't
yeah,
I,
there's a
I
lot
don't
of
know, but
difference in the language, but
yeah, we can.
yeah,
That's another conversation. But
yeah,
I
yeah,
think,
yeah, yeah, but
yeah, I mean, John is he one of my first loves in literature was Kerouac and his Bop prosody.
okay,
And and John Taggart is he's a jazz poet.
Okay.
It's um
Ah, okay. Uh-huh.
yeah, his poetry is very very musical.
All right. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah. And well, I forgot what I was going to ask you next, but okay. That's bad
but
for me. But
I like Japanese poets too. I mean,
okay. And
yeah,
like
I was drawn to you because of your work with your Santoka
oh,
translations.
Santeco. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you for that. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Uh, oh, here it came to me. There was a poet who we both know who once said, of course, he was quite up in years when he said this, that poetry can change the world. What do you think about that?
I think it can. It's yeah, absolutely. I mean, if it's I mean, poetry is about uplifting your voice, using your voice for change and um to make your world. I've been reading William Stafford
Okay.
lately. This is
Mhm.
a poem, I forget the name of it, but it ends with like he was a young man and traveling with his parents, and his father gave him his advice is that your job is to discover what the world is trying to be. And I think
Uh-huh.
that's and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's poetry. That's the poet's job, right?
Right.
That's to
Well,
what
I don't know.
It's just constantly changing. What do you think, Scott?
Depending on
You've been a working poet for a long time.
what
What do you think?
well, my answer to that, ask me now, I'm going to give you an answer. It would have been different than the answer I would have given maybe 10 or 20 years ago, right? When I would
Yeah.
have thought, that poetry had more of a social purpose. I'm not sure it has any much of a social purpose anymore, right? And I give up on the world, but no hope for it. No, but no, basically, as I just wrote to someone yesterday, as a matter of fact, who had sent me a new collection of his poetry, a guy down in New Zealand. I told him that poetry for me is life nourishing, right?
Yeah.
Now, the life nourishing, that can include social, of course, right? But it's a more of a multidimensional thing that right
Mhm.
includes spiritual and mental, intellectual, your entire being, right? As a social
Yeah.
being, as a spiritual being,
Yeah.
and all that all together. That's what poetry is for. That was the answer I give today. That doesn't mean it's
Well,
going
and that's
to
yeah,
stay
and that's
5 years from now or
certainly
something
it
like
can. I
that.
mean,
But
that's like
right, yeah,
I
doing
mean,
what I can at the moment, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's what Olson always wrote about is using your body and your breath to
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
change the world, and
yeah, yeah.
um,
Now
that's
these are little jobs. Let me just put another one up here, right?
yeah,
That you publish, right? And this is another one by David Giannini, who I used to be in touch with him. But 4+4. This is another. This is not a Watoji or hand stab job with a sewn volume. But what is the
no,
what is that?
no, no, that's a stapled chapbook.
A stapled chapbook. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Now, what I wanted to ask you about small press. Once when I was visiting Berkeley with another poet, when I was staying in San Francisco, this is years ago, maybe the year 2000, I guess. Uh, Peter Money was his name. He took me to the small press, I don't know,
All
warehouse or
press distribution.
distribution. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
SPD. Right. And
yeah,
all the books, you never saw any kind of these little chapbook size in there, right? So they were all sort of machine done. Uh,
right.
and so why can't your books, right? These hand sewn books like that you do, how come they can't be in the small press distribution?
As I don't make enough copies, I don't sell enough during the and because many years ago I sent them my list of publications, and yeah, I mean, I don't print enough copies.
That's it. So
Yeah.
yeah, and so it depends on the print, and so then you said you also mentioned you don't sell enough, so that's also a requirement. Like how much?
Yeah, yeah. And and I sent them broadsides and chapbooks like the one we just saw.
Yeah.
And they get lost. They'll get lost in
Okay.
all their paperbacks. So
Okay.
that's,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. So I think they work with presses that are printing more copies than I'm doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now the small
Uh,
those presses, those small presses that are you know doing more copies and making more money. So they're basically out of marketplace, right? Marketplace publishers, though. Would you say or no?
Yeah, yeah, I'd say, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's been some time since I've been, in that market, but yeah, and there nowadays there's so many ways you can publish a book. Anyone can publish a book, you know.
Now, yeah.
I mean, I did Charlie's book on Amazon,
Okay.
where it's,
Is that a POD, a print on demand, or what?
yeah, basically.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So, yeah, I know a lot of people are doing that now. A friend of mine is publishing a novel in a POD form. That's going to be on Amazon too eventually. But yeah, so the technology is, and the good thing about technology is making these, opening up these different possibilities, so that
sure.
you can get stuff out and
Yeah.
who knows, who's going to reach it, but of course with poetry, even with standard publishing poetry, who's going to see it,
That's yeah.
right? So
Yeah, I think you could reach more people on Instagram than you can with
yeah.
the printed book.
Right. Yeah. And that's another thing. I mean, well, like the people are doing that. You got an
Yep.
Instagram and I've done it too. You have a little image or something of a flower, and then you put a poem on there, and people tend to look at it more than they would, if it's and someone mentioned years back, I think it was someone named Clayton Eshelman or something. Uh and he made a statement that if you have a notebook, right, just a blank notebook, right, here, like this, notebook, right, and you can sell this at a stationery store, right, and get a certain amount of money for it. But if on those pages you were to print poems, who would buy it, right? In other words, a notebook itself, just the line blank page, is more marketable than a book of poetry. Was what his point was. What do you think
Mhm.
about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, what you can put everything you want into the notebook, you know.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
I yeah. It just poetry has changed so much, and I don't
Why
even
why did it change? Would you
I
come?
don't know. I mean, I know, and I don't even know. I mean, I am not in touch with the modern, the current poetry market,
Okay. Yeah.
one bit. Um, I mean, I follow a few current poets, but yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
mean, you asked my friend Carlo Parcelli. I
oh,
published a couple of his books.
okay.
Carlo is my my Ezra Pound of Country Valley Press.
I
He
remember you mentioning his name.
yeah, he only writes epic poetry.
Oh my
Uh
God.
and
Good luck with that.
just a fantastic and
Uh,
intelligent human being, like one of the most intelligent people I know.
Rick.
Uh it's you ask Carlo and he's like, poetry's become this greeting card where you can put
Uh-huh.
in you want in a
Right,
notebook,
right.
buy your
Yeah,
own notebook and put
yeah.
anything you
Hallmark.
want in there
Yeah,
and
yeah.
put it online and get likes. You
Well,
know, the
yeah.
poetry.
Uh, I've heard the explanation, that way back, not even when I was young, but the generation before, my parents' generation, post-war, that educated people most educated people used to read poetry
Yeah.
and publish in things like publications like the Partisan Review and things like that, right?
Mhm.
And so they knew poetry, they knew poets. They, if you mention a name, they would know it. Now, you know, I realize, you mention a poet's name, like even here in Japan, right? So the name Santoka, I mentioned it to my students, and nobody's ever heard of him, right?
Yeah.
And or like even in America, like on an interview that I did when I myself was interviewed back last year. I mean, some of the people in the audience never heard of Allen Ginsberg, right? Right. Uh,
Yeah.
and of course, then Ginsberg. So if you mention like Charles Olson, right, or something like
No
that,
one's heard
Robert
Charles
Duncan,
Olson.
they're
Yeah.
not going to know who the hell you're talking about, right? But
Yeah.
but why was that? And I suspect this is my own, you know, that poetry changed. I mean, it used to be like 19th century poetry. It was pretty much understandable, right? Tennyson or something like that, Carl Sandburg, but
Robert.
that people could read it and understand it. But something happened, similar to what happened in the art world, right? Like with cubism, surrealism, right? And like with cubism, like the or new comps, the nude descending the staircase or something. You get these multi-dimensionality, right? And then people like like Olson came out like a projective verse, right? Was
Mm.
sort of like the nude descending the staircase in poetry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting it
Yeah.
off the page, getting off the two-dimensional page into these other dimensions, right? Sort of seems to become the purpose, and that sort of left the average reader behind. You know,
Yeah.
modernism.
Yeah, it's modernism.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you get into postmodernism,
Oh,
and we're really getting out there. But
yeah. Where
uh,
are we now?
uh,
What is, yeah,
uh,
what is modern American poetry? What's poetry now?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is
So you living there, what is it?
is it swiping? Is it just,
uh,
snippets of information?
mm,
And it's like our language is adapted to the rise of technology.
right,
Um,
right. Yeah,
is poetry doing the same thing?
mm,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and it's my hope that, going back to like why I started the press is, and you, as you so eloquently stated, is like having that book in your hand and that
Mm,
experience of
right, right.
feeling that handmade paper and um like there's still we still have that, but it's like
Mm,
it, but most people are going to go for the experience of like flipping, searching something on their phone, and I'm guilty of it as well. I'm not judging anybody of that.
mm,
um and I think, can we, I think that's poetry right there. Like, how do we bring that back into that, that tactile immediate experience of
right, right, right.
that that was Whitman, right? I mean, that's in
Yeah,
Ginsberg,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know. I was thinking about your sutra today, and
Oh, the one.
Quake Notes and Quake Notes.
Oh, okay. Ah, in quickness.
Yeah,
Ah, ha, ha,
yeah,
ha.
yeah.
Uh,
And I, oh, was it the Radiation Sutra?
uh,
Um, and just that your
just
that was your culmination of your experience, and
right,
that,
right.
there you go,
That's
perfect.
quick notes.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is for the audience. This is a
yeah.
book that I wrote. Actually, I wrote this during the disaster. I right after we had the earthquake, and I was sending these as soon as we got electricity, which was like seven days after the original quake, and started because a lot of these queries are coming on through emails. Are you all right? And so to answer each one individually would take a long time. So I started making this earthquake journal, right? And then
Mm.
Mark published it in what 2012 was it or something like that? Like
Right. Yeah.
a year after the quake.
After.
Yeah, and this is available, I guess, at Country Valley Play. I think it's also maybe I uploaded it on Apple Bookstore. I forget, but
Yeah.
anyway, it's out there for anybody who's interested. All right, so and yeah, the sutra. What about the sutra? The radiation sutra. Yeah, and
Oh, well, I think
yeah.
it's, just going back to the poetry, the purpose of poetry is to,
Yeah, yeah.
be in touch with the immediacy of the moment. And
Right, right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
that's what a sutra is.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, yeah, and so that whole that was the immediacy. That whole writing was the immediacy. The moment, literally, I
Absolutely.
mean, I was
Yeah.
typing when the house was
Yeah.
shaking.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and I'd be upstairs. Had the niche upstairs, and then they would start shaking. Oh, I got to get out of here. So I go outside. We never knew because there were all these aftershocks, right?
Mm.
And we never knew how big they were going to be because they did have a huge one. The first one was March 11th, and on April 8th, almost a month after, they had another huge one. So you never really knew how big these were going to be. So you always wanted to go outside, uh, just in case, so you could run outside. It was not so bad. I run it back upstairs, start typing again. Well, I laugh at it now, but it wasn't so funny then, But yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, thank you for publishing that. How did that do? Did you get any with anybody reading it? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were
Yeah.
okay. Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, that's nice to know. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
mm,
And
yeah.
yeah, and I still, in fact, today I heard from someone about your um single bliss, but
Ah, the translation
about
of the
the
Yamal, right?
Yamal. Yeah.
Yamal Sansei. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, someone actually read that was quite some years ago, but yeah,
Yeah, that was
some someone's still reading it. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I never actually got to meet him in person. I may have told you that I saw him. There was an environmental uh, conference here in Sendai. They had just built an international conference hall, right? And so the following year, they had this environmental conference, and he was invited to speak and to read. And so he read some of his poetry, and then after that, I found out his contact information. I wrote, so we wrote back and forth about 10 years, and then right after 2011, no, excuse me, 2001, right after the 9/11 in America, Maury and I were planning. He lived down on Yakushima, which is a World Heritage Site now, nature reserve. We were going to go down there to meet him, and we called down, and his wife answered and said he had died in the summer. So that I never actually got to meet, but we did go anyway. We met his wife, and wife is from over here in Yamagata, actually. Second wife, right? First wife died early of cancer or something like that. So the second wife, and she, interesting story, uh, fell in love with him through his poetry. She found his poetry in a bookshop somewhere in Japan, and read his poetry and got in touch with him. Do you know of any stories like that? I mean, like, of people starting a romance through poetry?
yeah. Well, yeah, Elisa and I, I
Really?
was writing. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that's cool. All right. Well, how did that happen? Talk about that.
Oh, well, I was always making little books of poetry for her, and we started dating, and
Okay.
yeah. Um,
So
and
you
even,
were writing romantic poetry
of
for
course,
Elisa. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yes. See, poetry can change the world, can change our lives.
Great, 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 great.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark. Well, our time is up, right? We've been on for more than an
Yeah.
hour, actually.
An hour.
Yeah. Uh, I want to thank you for joining us today. And this eventually will be on YouTube. I guess for audience anyone who's interested in the Country Valley Press. And if you're interested in poetry, you can get some of these fine books. So they're still available, right? Some of them, these hand-sewn books, if anybody would want one, they could
Yes. Yeah.
contact you through
Yeah.
Country Valley Press. And
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right.
Email me at countryvalley@mac.com.
Okay. All right.
My website is countryvalley.wordpress.com.
Okay. All right. And I'll try to put that information in the comment section, or no, in the description when I put this up on YouTube. And so please
Perfect.
email or send me through private messenger or whatever. Send me that information. Okay. Okay. So thanks again, Mark, and give my
All right, thank
regards
you
to
so much,
Alicia,
Scott.
and
Yeah.
take care and good luck.
Yeah. Send our best to Morier.
I will. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.